All right, found to period three. Period three is 1750 to 1900. There are two big ideas in this period, and the first one is revolutions. Now, cause of all the political revolutions in this period is the Enlightenment. Remember, Enlightenment philosophers applied new ways of understanding about relationships. They're going to question religion. This is really the first major atheist movement in world history. It develops new ideas about individual natural rights and the social contract. Things like freedom of speech, freedom of press and petition, freedom of religion. These are all ideas that Enlightenment philosophers are going to believe in and back. Enlightenment ideas precede revolutions against existing governments, which means that lots of people who rebel or revolt are going to use the Enlightenment and the ideas of the Enlightenment as a justifications for their actions. Enlightenment inspires nationalism. For the first time, nationalism becomes a political force. This idea that all of us have a common bond, we speak a similar language, have a similar belief system and ethnicity. Nationalism becomes an important political force. It's going to influence reform movements that contribute to the expansion of rights, abolition of slavery, and the end of serfdom. And it's also going to contribute to the ideas of emergent feminist movements like Olympique de Gouges and the Declaration of the Rights of Women. All of these things are major reforms and beliefs associated with the Enlightenment and associated with political revolutions that are going to take place in period two. Now, you're going to see revolutions and rebellions that lead to new nation states. Examples like Greece. Greece successfully broke away from the Ottoman Empire. If you'll remember, the Ottomans empires hate nationalism because they're multinational, and nationalists want to break away from empires and create their own state. Greece is an example of that. Discontent with monarchies leads to new systems of government, including democracy and 19th century liberalism. What does that mean? Liberalism means, do you believe in the ideas of the Enlightenment and your government should have those ideas, like democracy, like separation of power, like separation of church and state? Basically, all the governing principles upon which the United States was founded are all examples of 19th century liberalism, and many nationalists and many revolutionaries in this time period are going to be proponents of this. Colonists all over the Americans rebel, and they're inspired by democratic ideals. The first one is the United States, the American Revolution, and its success is going to spur successful revolutions in Haiti and Latin America, the revolutions of Simon Bolivar. All these revolutions are going to be inspired by ideas in the Enlightenment, have documents that influence rebellions and pursue independence and democracy. Things like the Declaration of Independence in the United States, the Declaration of the Rights of Man with the French Revolution, and the Jamaica Letter are all examples of Enlightenment-inspired documents that are going to be associated with revolutions. And new nation states unite people. In some instances, nationalists challenge borders and boundaries and create new nation states, like in Greece, or they unite fragmented populations across many different borders. Now, while the political revolutions are important, the most important revolution is industrialization. Industrialization starts in period three, and we're still dealing with the ramifications of industrialization even to this day. You need to know that industrialization starts in Britain. And one of the things that all industrial powers are going to have access to are these things, but it starts in Britain because they had the best and the earliest access to these things. Access to the Atlantic over, rivers, canals, access to coal, iron, timber. Urbanization, which gave them a workforce. Improved agricultural productivity so fewer people could feed large cities. Protection of private property, access to global resources, and accumulation of capital are all reasons why the industrialization starts in Britain. And remember that the industrialization is all about a factory system that concentrates labor in a single place with an increasing degree of specialization of labor. Before industrialization, people worked in their homes. Now people work under one roof together, mass producing goods with the aid of machinery, with increased degrees of specialization of labor. That's the theme. Starts in Britain. It's going to spread to the US, Germany, France, Russia, and Japan by the end of this time period. And steam-powered industrial production is going to shift where things are made in the world in period three. In period one and period two, most of the stuff in the world was made in the Middle East and Asia. That's going to shift to industrial powers. And European and Asian states are going to lose manufacturing share. For example, in period 2, the world's leading producers of textiles were India and Egypt. By the end of period 3, it's going to be United States, Britain, and Germany. So the rise of European production comes at the expense of Middle Eastern and Asian states. The Industrial Revolution is going to be spurred by new technologies. All of this is stuff we've talked about before. Machines, including steam engines and internal combustion engines, unlock the energy stored in fossil fuels. Remember this, I have told you this before. Machines are not tools, machines are keys. Fossil fuels have tremendous amounts of energy within them, and machines are the key that unlocks that energy, increases the amount of energy that's at human disposal. Roughly around 1850, we say there's a second industrial revolution, which leads to producing steel, chemicals, and electricity. This is largely centered in the United States and in Germany, whereas the early industrial revolution was based on making textiles and iron. This is the evolution of it. Railroads, steamships, and telegraphs make exploration, development, and communication possible in interior regions, which led to increased trade and migration. Because of these transportation and communications tools, there's going to be more trade, and it's going to enable migrations to take place for the first time. Governments play a role in industrialization. In some instances, it'll be state-sponsored. In Japan and Russia, industrialization is going to occur as a result of state planning. It's an official policy of the state. In the case of Japan, this was as a result of increasing pressure from the United States, especially, and also Europe. Japan had no plans on industrializing until Matthew Perry and then some Europeans coming later on put pressure and strain and forced them to start to have a relationship with them. And Japanese reformists realized if we don't fix our system and fix it quickly, we're going to become a colony. And this is going to lead to the overthrowing of the Tokugawa shogunate and the rise of Meiji Japan. Industrial powers abandoned mercantilism. Mercantilism was the dominant economic philosophy of period 2, which limits who your colonists can trade with. In period 3, they're going to adopt a free market theories of laissez-faire capitalism espoused by Adam Smith. You'll see new transnational businesses emerge, like the Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation. This is going to be a global enterprise. Just like we had joint stock companies in period 2, you're going to see new transnational businesses emerge in period 3. And the development of industrial capitalism globally is going to lead to increased standards of living, at least for some people. And it's going to create a growing middle class. One of the things that's associated with industrialization is a rising middle class. If you ask what country has the largest middle class in the world today, it's the United States. Why? We've been one of the states that's been industrialized the longest. Even new countries like Mexico, they're only recently becoming industrialized. You see growing middle classes there. And middle class just means a group of people who has some extra. It's not just subsistence. It's not just straight check to check. Paycheck to paycheck, and also increases the availability, affordability, and variety of consumer goods. So industrial capitalism leads to the creation of a middle class, increased standards of living of at least some people, and more affordable and variety of consumer goods. However, there's problems with industrial capitalism, which can oftentimes be the exploitation of the lowest classes. To combat this, governments are going to sponsor educational, political, social, and urban reforms. Educational reforms like in the United States, free education, political reforms like increasing who can vote in Britain and the US. These are all reforms meant to combat the social and economic changes brought by industrial capitalism. Workers will also fight back. Workers who feel like they're not getting their fair share will unionize and fight for better wages and conditions as part of this, as part of a movement against the excesses of industrial capitalism. And some will promote alternative visions for how society should be organized. Discontent amongst workers who felt they were being exploited led to creation of various ideologies, including those espoused by Karl Marx, who is the father of communism. Remember this, there are no communist states in period 3, but the idea of communism is created in period 3 as a response to the excesses of industrial capitalism. Now, some Asian states are going to attempt to reform themselves by reforming, modernizing their economy, and industrializing. such as in China with the self-strengthening movement, I should say the Qing dynasty, and the Ottoman Empire in the Middle East. But in both places, elites who were benefiting from existing systems of power blocked those attempts. And the ultimate byproduct of that is those systems are going to continue to fall further and further behind. Now, one of the things that the Industrial Revolution does is it creates new set of social classes. We said middle class will emerge and a working class emerge. Middle class women, their lives are confined to the home, raising kids. The idea of dad goes to work, mom stays home with the kids, that is a middle class ideal associated with the Industrial Revolution. However, working class women and even children are actually going to work in wage earning jobs in the Industrial Revolution. So you see the role of women very, very different based on the class that you're in. And then you got the problems of cities. Very quick urbanization, which are centers of factory production, are going to cause problems that had not been seen before, like pollution. Air pollution becomes a problem for the first time in world history in period 3. Poverty, crime, housing, and shortages. And remember, these things associated with the Industrial Revolution are associated with all states that industrialized, especially the ones in period 3, but it's also going to be true later on for those who industrialize in period 4. That's the review of revolutions. Stick around for your work. Thanks, guys.